Hey everybody, it's Coach Jason. Welcome back to the channel. I want to continue on my training series today. My last video, and it's in the description down below, I went into some detail on the aerobic threshold, okay, which is an important part of training, and it doesn't really matter whether you're training for the half mile or the marathon and everything in between. The aerobic threshold is an important component to training. So be sure you take a look at that video. It's in the description down below, and I have a couple other important videos down below too. I talk about a 1 mile time trial, and what it tells you about your fitness, your current fitness, and then how to set the right training paces for runs and workouts and everything based on what you run for 1 mile time trial, okay? Those two videos I recommend to everybody because it makes things like this, the anaerobic threshold and the aerobic threshold, it makes things a lot more understandable. They make a lot more sense to you when you start to see, okay, I see the training pace ranges here, I see why you're doing this, and so on and so forth, okay? It gives you a lot of detail, so I highly recommend you watch both of those videos. They're in the description below. Watch them in their entirety, okay? Don't pause, write stuff down, and then click off because you'll miss a lot of important details. And if you're a coach or an athlete, I want you to learn as much as possible from these videos so that you're in the position to make good decisions for yourself and for your athletes, okay? That's key. The more you learn, the better off you're going to be, the better prepared you're going to be to not only make good decisions, but to make adjustments on the fly if you need to as well. And it'll give you more insight and a better understanding of athletes and the different type of athletes that you'll work with, because not everybody's the same. Okay, so those things are important, particularly training at the right training paces. And I talk about that in the aerobic threshold as well. But today I want to talk about the anaerobic threshold. It's similar to the aerobic threshold, but there are some differences. I consider it the icing. I talk about, aerobic threshold is kind of baking the cake. It's one of the fundamental pieces and the building blocks. Then you transition over to things like the anaerobic threshold when the time comes, and it's kind of putting icing on a cake that you've been baking. It's taking your training up to the next level, okay, when the body's ready for it, when your athletes are ready for it, okay? And again, the more you're addressing the aerobic threshold, the better off your anaerobic threshold is going to be, and the more it's going to help your race performance. And that's key, and that's at the end of the game. And it's not only, running faster races and PBs, but you become a better racer, okay? A more savvy racer, a more tactical racer. You'll be in a position to make all kinds of adjustments, and that's also key, okay? Like you see in the Olympics, and it's kind of an exaggerated example, but in the Olympics, the majority of the distance races are tactical races. So, and doing stuff like anaerobic threshold work and speed development and aerobic threshold work puts you in a position to be able to run like that, race like that. So, but you don't have to be at the Olympic level to be able to do these things. So that's why I want you to get a good understanding of it. So with that, I'm going to move over here. I have my board up. Okay, and I've got some detail here. I'm going to sit down only because when I stand up, I decapitate myself. So I don't want you, listening to a headless coach. So, and by the way, I speak from 20 plus years experience. I was a former competitor at the high school, college, and post-college level. I coached at all of those levels now. And I have coached from beginner all the way up to the elite level. I still work with a lot of post-collegiate runners as well. So I speak from experience, and I've learned a lot from other coaches over the past couple of decades. I'm a USATF certified coach. You'll see my credential on the page here on the channel. And I'm also a Wharton certified musculoskeletal flexibility therapist. So I'm here to help you stay healthy while you run fast too. Okay. So let's get to this. Anaerobic threshold, okay? Like I had mentioned already, it increases as you increase your aerobic threshold, okay? But it also needs focused training. So you need to kind of, at some point, transition to really focusing on just anaerobic threshold running, okay, in order to see substantial gains, okay, in that particular zone to maximize the elevation of your anaerobic threshold, okay? And essentially, it can be a continuous run of about 20 to 25 minutes. Even for less experienced runners, you build towards 15 minutes and then you kind of work your way up. So essentially 15 to 25, but once you get a little bit more experience, 20 to 25 is the sweet spot, okay, as a continuous run. Okay, and that's where it differs from an aerobic threshold. Aerobic threshold is a slower pace, but it's more so, it's between 30 and 60 minutes. So that's where you transition as you get fitter into these runs. Okay, so again, it's continuous for 20 to 25 minutes at a slightly faster pace, or reps at a slightly faster pace with short recoveries, threshold or cruise intervals. And we'll go over that in a little bit, okay? And they have short recoveries. So you can basically break them up into pieces, okay? And you can do it a couple different ways. I mean, you could break them up into pieces and then work at that same pace range depending on where your current fitness is, and then can build towards a longer continuous run. Or once you get fitter, those cruise intervals are slightly faster than the continuous run, okay? So there's a little bit of a difference. So you have like your aerobic threshold and your anaerobic threshold, and then slightly faster than that are the cruise intervals. So that's a way you can break it up too as you get fitter and more experienced, okay? Again, it's very beneficial towards improving your performances. I mentioned that already in your PBs, and it helps you become a much more experienced, much stronger competitor, and much better at racing. Okay, it's an important part of training that unfortunately I've seen too many people neglect, and I think it's very important. Which is why I'm doing these videos, because I want to hopefully help you get a better insight and better understanding of this type of training, so that you can learn how to incorporate it in your own training or the training of your athletes. Okay, an anaerobic threshold workout should not exceed 10% of total mileage for the week. So if you're running 30 miles a week, the workout itself should be no longer than 3 miles, and that includes the continuous run. Okay, or no more than 3 miles. So let's say 5 times 1,000, 4 times 1,200, 3 times a mile. And let's say the recoveries are a minute. Okay, and they're at a prescribed pace. If you're at 40 miles a week, then no more than 4 miles in any given workout, okay, once per week. So no, 4 miles, 6 times 1,000, 5 times 1,200, 4 times a mile. If you're running 50 miles a week, no more than 5 miles. 60 miles a week, no more than 6 miles, and so on, okay? That's very, very important as well. Excuse me. To make sure that you're not exceeding the capacity and not getting to the point where it becomes counterproductive, and it starts to hinder recovery towards a race or towards the next workout. Okay, it's important to remain in the appropriate training pace ranges to make sure you're not going overly fast. Okay, and there's a differential between this and, let's say, the aerobic threshold run. The aerobic threshold run is approximately marathon pace. So let's say you're at a 5-minute mile, and I used the same example in the last video. The aerobic threshold continuous run for 30 to 60 minutes is about a minute to 20 or a minute to 30 slower than your mile pace. So if you run 5-minute mile, this continuous run should be anywhere between 6:20 and 6:30 per mile. Okay, the anaerobic threshold run for 20 to 25 minutes, you want to build towards that. This is about 50 to 60 seconds slower. Okay, so this essentially be at 5:50 to 6 minutes per mile. Okay, for a continuous 20 to 25 minutes. The broken down reps, maybe 45 to 50 seconds faster. So only about 5 to 10 seconds faster per mile than the continuous runner. You build up to that point. Okay, but nevertheless still slower than 5K pace, but faster than your tempo run. Okay, it's kind of that level in between the two. Okay. That's kind of how much you should run and how fast you should run it. And at no point should you increase volume and intensity at the same time, or at no point should you increase the intensity unless a race tells you, or a time trial tells you, that your fitness has advanced, in which case you're increasing the training paces for everything, okay? But it should be at a gradual pace, at a gradual rate, okay? And in terms of increasing volume, I'm a recommendation of not increasing more than maybe 10% per year. And when you do increase volume, everything should be somewhat easy until your body has a chance to adapt to it before you start incorporating hard stuff again. Okay, it's an adaptation. Whether you're increasing one or the other, it's still an adaptation, and the body needs about 21 to 28 days to adapt to that new stimuli. Okay, before you start to increase the intensity again. That's to keep you and your athletes healthy as well. It's very, very important. Okay, and I'm erring on the conservative side. Yes, it's possible to do things, increase this and that and this and that, but it's not the norm. Okay, it's definitely an outlier in most cases. So, want to put you in a position to help you, again, make the best decisions possible for yourself and your athletes. Always. Okay. it's like I said, it's important to remain in the appropriate training pace ranges until something indicates that you're ready to increase the intensity, like I said. Okay? Anything exceeding 25 minutes in a continuous run, or for pretty much the duration of these workouts, can be counterproductive. Okay? Keep that in mind too. So, 1,000-meter reps, let's say 800-meter reps, between 45 and 60 seconds recovery. 1,000-meter reps, essentially between 45 and 60-second recovery. 1,200-meter reps, and even mile reps, between 60 seconds and 75-second recovery. The mile reps, I recommend 90-second recoveries for people who are not used to them. But as you get fitter, if you can bring them down to 75 seconds, you get more experience. As you get faster, you bring them down to 75 seconds recovery, so that everything's kind of in line with each other, so that you're essentially spending more time in the threshold zone as the reps get longer, but you're maintaining the same pace, so you're getting more threshold work done, okay, in a single session, okay? But it doesn't mean increase the volume. So let's say if the whole thing is 4 miles, that's 8 times 800, let's say 6 times 1,000, 5 times 1,200, 4 times a mile. It's the same distance that you're running for the same volume, but you're just spending more time in the threshold zone every time you increase the length of the rep, okay? So that's an indication your fitness is improving, but it's got to be done over time. And this is also something that you incorporate, or you alternate with a continuous threshold run the week prior, or a tempo run, anaerobic threshold, or even an aerobic threshold. How you lay out the training is important, okay? And the last thing I want to point out is, these can be, you can use these as high volume type work early in the season in the base phase, but they can also be, great maintenance workouts while you're in race season as well. They're they're less invasive than race pace reps, so they don't require the amount of recovery. You can come back maybe in a day quicker, but it's also something that this is an opportunity to kind of slow things down to help you get faster. And what I mean by slowing things down is this stuff, threshold stuff, is slower than race pace, but you can do the same amount of volume or more volume, okay? And you'll get the same benefit, but in a much less invasive way, okay? And again, it's a great race week workout. Like I said, it's non-invasive, and the cool thing about it too is you hardly incur any oxygen debt in these workouts. Now, if this was race pace with that short recovery, yes, you would. But this is not race pace. This is slower than race pace with short recovery. Okay, that's slower than race pace of a continuous run, but you're not incurring oxygen debt because they're at the appropriate training paces. Now, if you're exceeding the training pace ranges where your current fitness is, chances are you're going to incur oxygen debt. But the goal is to learn how to run fast without running hard, okay? And if you can learn how to do that, it's good. It's really good, okay? So I hope this video was helpful. If you found something you found helpful, you enjoyed, please hit the thumbs up. Make sure you hit the subscribe button before you leave, okay? I'm gonna keep going into kind of detailed specific parts of training to give you a good understanding of, especially things that are folks, middle distance runners and distance runners alike, should be doing, okay? They're really, really important components to enhancing your fitness, okay? That's why I went over this. That's why I went over aerobic threshold in the last video. I'm going to keep doing some things like this now, and then I'm going to transition over to a couple of 800-meter videos, a sub-2 10 800 and a sub-2 minute 800 specific workouts to help you get there. And if there's any other type of video that I haven't done yet, take a look at the list. I have about 150 videos that you'd like for me to do. Put them in the comments down below, and I'll get to work on it for you. And if you subscribe, let me know too, so I can thank you as well. Just put it in the comments down below. I appreciate your support. Okay, I want to continue growing this channel. I want it to be one of the most comprehensive channels out there in terms of training detail. So, with that, be safe, train hard, train smart. Talk to you next time.